All right, well, a lot of people
deep.
may think attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, only affects kids, but this is a huge misconception.
It really is. More than 11% of children have been diagnosed with ADHD, compared to nearly 4% of adults. October, by the way, is ADHD Awareness Month, so joining us right now to talk about it is Dr. Brian Sultan. He's a medical director of Integrative Psych. Thank you for being here. In simple terms, what is going on in ADHD brains?
Yeah. So what we want to start is we want to think about sort of ADHD in childhood. And I think you guys did a really nice job framing this around the idea that ADHD doesn't exist in adulthood, that was an idea that we had up until about the 1990s. And part of that came from the fact that ADHD symptoms, they really start to show up in childhood. And what we see are that youth with ADHD tend to have brains that are a little bit different than everyone else's, right? So these are your eyes in front here, your prefrontal cortex. When we scan this part of a brain of a person with ADHD, we're going to notice there's less activity of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. Yeah. You might notice there's less blood flow here, and you might notice that it's not as developed. And this part of your brain, it's like the brake on a car. So it allows you to sort of slow down, control impulsivity, so maybe you wouldn't call out in class as a little kid.
Okay.
Or that you might have better judgment before doing something rash. So as you get older, usually we think this would go away and you'd have no symptoms. But we actually found that 2/3 of people with ADHD still have symptoms into adulthood. Oh. And that's where this idea of adult ADHD started to develop.
So what are some of the signs and symptoms in children and adults? Are they different, similar?
Yeah, so you want to think of the underlying idea, and then you kind of can project it out onto maybe school versus work environments, and in both cases, interpersonal relationships. So for kids, we notice a lot of careless mistakes. We'll have parents coming in saying, I tell them something and it goes in one ear and out the other. And they might be hyperactive, so impulsive, inattention, and hyperactivity. As you talk more about adults, careless mistakes come a lot. Anything related to executive function, which is I have to do multiple things that are kind of complex tasks. So anything with planning or organization, these people would struggle with, say, planning a trip, because there's so many decisions that you have to make along the way. And they tend to also find that they're not going to be able to sit and have a duration of attention span that's as long as someone without ADHD.
And is there still pretty much a stigma towards this?
Yeah, I think it's decreased significantly, but historically, yeah, there's absolutely been that, and an idea that these people were not as smart, which has never been found to be true, as well as the idea that it doesn't exist, and that's not true, or that we made up this idea recently, because we actually know that people were talking about what we think about as ADHD now back in the 1700s.
Interesting.
Are there some strengths associated with people who have ADHD that actually allow them to still perform normally? What's considered normally?
Yeah, so I actually like to even separate from a normal idea. I think people with ADHD, there's sort of an idea of thinking them as not neurotypical, meaning their brains are a little different, but that there's some advantages to that for them, right? So the advantage for some reason to this change in their brain, which we know probably was been around a long time, like hundreds of thousands of years ago, like when we were hunter-gatherers, is that they're more creative. That they think out of the box and they come up with different, more interesting solutions. They tend to be more adventurous. They take higher risks, which can have disadvantages for them, but also is an opportunity for a payoff.
All right.
I probably had ADHD as a child, but my mom would just say I'm hard-headed. Like I didn't listen and go in and out.
Well, you're still stubborn.
Yeah. Anyways.
Dr. Sultan, thank you so much for joining us today. He's like, why am I here while y'all are fighting? I appreciate it. For a complete guide, by the way, to ADHD or to make an appointment, please visit the websites on your screen.